Okay, we're in the 21st chapter of Ezekiel. All right, since we're all there. The word of Yehovah came to me. Once again, Mashiach, pre-incarnate form, came to him either in a vision or he heard an audible voice. It doesn't tell us always. Sometimes we know it tells us that he saw him. Sometimes we just don't know. It says, O mortals, set your face toward Teman and proclaim to Daram and prophesy against the brushland of the Negev. Say to the brushland of the Negev, hear the word of Yehovah. Thus said Yehovah Elohim, I am going to kindle a fire in you, which shall devour every tree of yours, both green and withered. Its leaping flame shall not go out, and every face from south to north shall be scorched by it. Then all flesh shall recognize that I, Yehovah, have kindled it. It shall not go out. And I said, Ah, Yehovah Elohim, they say of me, he is just a riddle monger. How many times I've felt like that? Yehovah, tell me, go into this church and deliver this message. And when I walk out, they think I'm a crazy person. These two have been with me when I did things like that. It's not easy to be the person who brings the hard message. Let me tell you something about the Negev. Negev literally in Hebrew means south. But it's specifically a region of Eretz Yisrael, okay, the land of Israel. It's a section in the southernmost portion of the country that in the time of Ezekiel was called brush country. It was kind of a wilderness area. It was grown up. It was wild. History tells us that the kings of Israel would go there for great hunts. Okay? And now, today, it is a desert. It is a wasteland. It is so barren. It is such rugged country that the Israeli Defense Force sends its combat troops to the Negev for extended wilderness survival training. It is considered the roughest region of the country, and they send them there to train before they send them into other countries that are desolate wastelands. That's what it has become. And so even though they called him a riddle monger at the time, everything that he prophesied about that region became true and is still true today. Then the word of Yehovah came to me, O mortals, set your face toward Jerusalem and proclaim against her sanctuaries and prophesy against Eretz Yisrael. Say to Eretz Yisrael, thus said Yehovah, I am going to deal with you. I will draw my sword from its sheath, and I will wipe out from you both the righteous and the wicked, in order to wipe out from you both the righteous and the wicked. My sword shall assuredly be unsheathed against all flesh from south to north, and all flesh shall know that I, Yehovah, have drawn my sword from its sheath, not to be sheathed again. He says, I am going to make sure that people have my attention. He says, I'm not just going to lay waste, because you all have been 400 and, what's the math work out there? So 490 years not obeying this commandment. Yes, 490 years. 70 times they had not kept the commandment of the seventh-year Sabbath. And he says, I am going to draw my sword against you, and I am not going to be sparing. And not only the remnant that remains afterward, but every nation around you is going to know that I am the God of creation. And that when you enter into a covenant with me, I will hold you accountable as I am accountable. But you know the other side of this that people always miss? When Mashiach was teaching, and one of his disciples came up to him and said, Rabboni, master teacher, how often should I forgive my brother? As often as he sins against you. What if he sins against me 7 times in one day? Mashiach looked at him and said, not 7 times that you should forgive him, but 70 times 7 times. Now go and forgive him. What he was referring to was the fact that Abba Elohim, although according to the standard of the covenant had the right anyway, but according to the standard of the covenant, he should have wiped out the entire people. There shouldn't have been a remnant. Because 70 times they had failed to keep the 7-year Sabbath. That's where the 70 times 7 times comes from. And so what he's really saying to the disciple who asked him that question is, do you remember what my father did? Do you remember when you, the Jewish people, sinned against him in mass 70 times, 7 times, and he still gave enough forgiveness that there was still a remnant of the Jewish people, that there was still a people in Eretz Yisrael to this day? Do you remember that? If you can remember that and know that you have no right to stand here and ask me that question, then go forgive your brother. He said, if my Father can show you this grace to bring you back to this land after only 70 years when you sinned against him for 490 years, go forgive your brother. What a picture of grace. And you, O mortal, sigh with tottering limbs and bitter grief, sigh before their eyes. And when they ask you, why do you sigh? Answer, because of the tidings that have come. It says, tell them it's because I know what's about to happen. Every heart shall sink and all hands hang nerveless. Every spirit shall grow faint and all knees turn to water because of the tidings that have come. It is approaching, it shall come to pass, declares Yehovah Elohim. The word of Yehovah came to me. So now some time has passed. Why there's not a chapter break here, I don't know. I mean, I know how they broke it down, but it would make more sense to me that this would be the beginning of a new teaching, but that's not how it's broken down. O mortal, prophesy and say, thus said Yehovah Elohim, a sword has been whetted and polished. In other words, I'm getting it sharp, getting it ready to go. It has been whetted to wreak slaughter. Therefore, it has been ground to a brilliant polish. How can we rejoice? My son, it scorns the rod and every stick. It has been given to be polished and then grasped in the hand. For this has the sword been whetted, for this polished, to be put into the hand of a slayer. In other words, he said, not only am I promising to bring suffering upon the country that has rejected me, I have chosen who will do it. Cry and wail, O mortal, for this shall befall my people. This shall befall all the chieftains of Yisrael. Why? Because judgment begins at the house and with the leadership. They shall be cast before the sword together with my people. O strike the thigh in grief. Consider how shall it fail to happen, seeing that it even scorns the rod, says Yehovah Elohim. Further, O mortal, prophesy, striking hand against hand. Let the sword strike a second time, and yet a third time. It is a sword for massacre, a sword for great carnage that passes upon them. Thus hearts shall lose courage, and many shall fall. At all their gates I have appointed slaughter by the sword. It is made to flash brilliantly, it is honed for slaughter. Be united, go to the right, turn left, whither are you bound? In other words, you'll all run out together and no one will escape. I too will strike hand against hand and will satisfy my fury upon you. I, Yehovah, have spoken. The word of Yehovah came to me. Yet another vision, another reception of prophecy. And you, O mortal, choose two roads on which the sword of the king of Babylon may advance, both issuing from the same country, and select a spot. Select it where the roads branch off to two cities. Notice this. He's not even saying, I'm going to tell you where it is. He's saying, you pick where he's going to stand, and you tell them he's going to stand there, and that's where I'll have him stand. Now, I used to think that the one great test of a prophet was whether or not what he says comes true, or what she says comes true. And then I realized Satan also has that power. Hasatan can give a false prophecy and cause it to come true. Okay? And then I was studying the Torah, and I realized that the true test, according to Torah, is that everything they say lines up with Torah. And that's what Ezekiel is saying here. He's saying, you broke the covenant says this will happen, this is going to happen. Elohim is saying, tell them this is how it's going to happen. Said, oh, but guess what? Torah doesn't say who's going to deliver the massacre, and it doesn't say where he's going to stand and make his decision. So I'm telling you, as the king of Babylon, you pick where he's going to stand. And we're going to show the people that I am the God of creation. Choose a way for the sword to advance on Rabbah of the Ammonites, or on fortified Jerusalem in Yehudah. For the king of Babylon has stood at the fork of the road where two roads branch off to perform divination. He has shaken arrows, consulted teraphim, and inspected the liver. In other words, he's doing all this pagan witchcraft stuff to try to decide where he would be more likely to be victorious. In his right hand came up the omen against Jerusalem, to set battering rams, to proclaim murder, to raise battle shouts, to set battering rams against the gates, to cast up mounds, to erect towers. In their eyes, the oaths they have sworn to them were like empty divination. But this shall serve to recall their guilt. In other words, this will bring back to memory who they are, what they're supposed to do. for which they shall be taken to task. Assuredly, thus said Yehovah Elohim, for causing your guilt to be recalled, your transgressions to be uncovered, and your sins to be revealed. And isn't that how it works? Nothing we do in darkness fails to come to light. Why? Because he chastises his own. People tell me, well, I can't go to that church. Don't you know there's a lot of sin in that church? Is there more sin in that church than there is the one down the road? Or is this just where his children actually are and he's chastising them and bringing them under correction? Something's always got to be found out. Is it there are sin issues among those people in that congregation and they're in denial and they're trying to cover it still? Or have they been called to repentance and they're confessing their sin? I pray that this will always be a congregation where we're called to repentance and confess our sin, because if it's not, then it means we're not really his children. Because the people of the world don't care that they're sinful. And the people of the world who come falsely into congregations bring sin with them and harbor it and foster it. And then that sin grows and contaminates the flock and destroys the congregation. Some people say, I don't want a congregation that has sin. Well, then you don't want a congregation with people. Because we all have sin. There are two types of sinners in this world, two types of people in this world. There's sinners and sinners saved by grace. If we're saved by grace and we know it, then we will contemplate our own sin lives, our sin issues, and work on getting those sins out of our lives. If we're just plain sinners, we might come and hear a good sermon or a bad sermon and feel good about ourselves and go home. Assuredly, I said to Yehovah, for causing your guilt to be recalled, your transgressions to be uncovered. I just read that. All your misdeeds, because you have brought yourselves to my mind, you shall be taken to task. In other words, because you have shown me that you will not obey the covenant, now we're going to have it out. Okay, this is the father saying to the child, we have this understanding. You live in my house, you live by my rules. If you don't live by my rules, you're getting a spanking, you're going to the corner, and you're going to bed early. Oh, that's terrible. No, that's love. That's love, because if I let my children do the things that I tell them not to do, when they grow up, they'll do the things that the law tells them not to do. If I let them run rampant and have their way on everything, they will grow up believing that the world owes them. There's a reason we call him Abba. Abba is Father. There's a reason why we call him that. It's not it's not some weird coincidence that is a name for him. And sometimes he needs to spank us and put us in the corner and send us to bed without supper, because we deserve it. Actually, we deserve a lot more. We deserve to be kicked out of the house, be homeless, destitute. But instead, he says, I'm just going to punish you for a little while, and then we're going to do this again. And to you, O dishonored, wicked prince of Israel, whose day has come, the time set for your punishment, thus said Yehovah Elohim, remove the turban and lift off the crown. And we know that this happened. We know that the prince who was reigning as quote-unquote queen, or quote-unquote king, at the time, was carried into captivity before his people. This shall not remain as it is. Exalt the low and abase the high. And this is a principle that becomes very, very important later in the Brit Hadesh. Exalt the low, abase the high. Both, we see it in Mashiach's life, but both Yaakov, or James, and Cephas, or Peter, both tell us in their letters that Elohim resists the proud and gives grace to the humble. When we are too proud to follow his laws, he resists us, he abases us. He casts us down and shows us where we actually belong. He knocks the pride out of us. I like to think of Yehovah as the ultimate jiu-jitsu master. Okay? When I am arrogant and proud, he knocks me out with a touch. When I am humble, he gives me grace and he lifts me up and he can use me then. And it's true for every one of us. Ruin and utter ruin, I will make it. It shall be no more until he comes to whom it rightfully belongs, and I will give it to him. That was the last time that a king of the line of David, line of David, sat on the throne in Israel. Now, there is a Davidic family, there's more than one, but one primary Davidic family who is sitting on a throne today in the world, reigning, waiting. And that's how the prophecy that the scepter of rule would never leave from the hand of, there would always be someone of the Davidic line with a scepter in their hand, ruling. Okay, because one of the descendants of David was taken out of Israel by Jeremiah and hidden, and we know where that family is today, and we know the throne that they sit on. But they're not sitting in Jerusalem. They're not at Jerusalem. They're not sitting in the castle, the palace that was there that the king reigned from. And no true Davidic king will sit there until Mashiach returns. Further, O mortal, prophesy and say, thus said Yehovah Elohim concerning the Ammonites and their blasphemies. Proclaim, O sword, unsheathed for slaughter, polished to the utmost, to a flashing brilliance, because they have prophesied falsely about you and have divined deceitfully concerning you. You shall be wielded over the necks of the dishonored wicked ones, for their day has come, the time set for their punishment. Return it to its sheath in the place where you were created, in the land of your origin. I will judge you. In other words, he says, you know what, Babylon, I'm using you right now to correct my people. But when I'm finished with that, I will judge you. And history tells us that the Medo-Persians invaded Babylon and said anyone who wished, who was Jewish, any Yisraelim, to go back to the land. I will pour out my indignation upon you. I will blow upon you with the fire of my wrath, and I will deliver you into the hands of barbarians, craftsmen of destruction. You shall be fuel for their fire. Your blood shall sink into the earth. You shall not be remembered, for I, Yehovah, have spoken. And when Babylon fell, it fell in a night. When the Medo-Persians came to seize the Babylonian capital, they came in stealthily. They found a secret entrance into the city. They overran it at night. And when the next day dawned, there was a new king on the throne. And it goes down in history to this day as one of the most amazing conquests there ever was. As a cadet for the army, I was required to study the tactics that were used there. The gathering of intelligence, the compiling of it, the planning, and exactly how it was executed. Because it was a masterpiece of military ingenuity. What was then the second, at that point, considered to be the second most powerful empire in the world, gone in a day. And Elohim predicted 70 years before that through Ezekiel that that's exactly how it would happen. Do we have a midrash on this? You don't think Ezekiel predicted it? He knew what was going to happen. He's seen the end. He's seen everything between the beginning and the end. Anyone else?